Welcome to your Relationship RX. In this video, I'm unpacking the topic of ghosting. What are the stats? Is it more common now than ever? Why do people ghost? And most importantly, what can you do instead of ghosting? And how can you cope if this has happened to you? Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Welcome back to my channel. On Sundays, I like to give you videos that cover your burning questions about dating and relationships because, quite frankly, I'd like to make dating a safer place. But as a psychologist and a therapist, I'm a stickler for how to use terms correctly because we throw around these words very liberally, like gaslighting, red flags, ghosting. But ghosting, if used too liberally, can make people think that dating is a scarier place than it is. Because everyone uses the word ghosting like this.
My husband didn't get back to me. I can't believe he ghosted me.
Or when someone doesn't reply, you think you've been ghosted.
Ghosted again?
So no, your husband didn't ghost you because he just didn't respond. And you're not always going to hear back from somebody on the dating apps. But the problem when we use these terms incorrectly is that you in fact believe that these things happen all the time, and it can create a lot of dating fears. Now, first off, I want to say I have real empathy for this topic. No one likes to be rejected. I get it. Dating is hard. But the real word ghosting, it was meant to be used when you're in a full-blown relationship and suddenly someone pulls a Casper on you. Casper the ghost, they disappear, poof, no closure, you have no idea. And that's an awful position to be in, left with no understanding what went wrong, and suddenly the future I had planned with this person is simply gone. The problem is it's hard not to take it personally. You feel paralyzed. Now you become hyper-vigilant and guarded the next time that you date someone. What if this happens again? And in the process of wondering, why haven't they texted me back? It's kind of like grief. You go through stages of grieving. First, you're left to overthink. Oh my God, what happened? Did I do something wrong? Then two, you're feeling angry. What the hell? Didn't they know how special this was? How special I am? How unique this connection is? Three, you're manifesting them back. Maybe if I say a prayer, maybe if I have a voodoo doll, I'm going to get them to text me back. Fourth, you can act like I don't care at all. Filing your nails. Five, you're rereading your text, going back over it. Oh my God, did I share too much? Maybe it was me. Six, you realize that maybe you were a little bit clingy and you need to be more mysterious. And finally, when you do hear back from them, you are quick to respond. But let's look at the stats. How common actually is ghosting? According to the people at the Thriving Center for Psychology, where I took these statistics, there's a comprehensive list, and I want to add a few more reasons to that. So 1 in 4 people report that they've been ghosted after the first date or after a couple of dates. Now, I would argue with this because, back to the definition of ghosting, if that means that you're in a full-blown relationship, if you've only been on a few dates and suddenly somebody stops corresponding with you, is that really ghosting? But technically, if we stick to the word, 1 in 10 people shared that they've been ghosted after a couple of months of dating. Okay, a much lower statistic, 1 in 10. Not 90% of people, but ghosting has become so bothersome that 30% of people are simply just fed up with dating. Some people suggest that ghosting is more common due to the dating apps, and I don't disagree. The problem with the apps is that the amount of anonymity. No one feels responsible. You start conversations, you don't end them, but you haven't really connected with this person, so for you somehow it feels justifiable. It's kind of like leaving comments on social media. You're not completely connected. It would be very different if you knew this person, they were a friend of a friend, or you'd met them at work, right? Now, when people were polled and they asked the reasons why they ghosted, this doesn't equal 100%, but the statistics say that 64% of people said that they have ghosted in the past because they were not interested in continuing a relationship. All right, that makes sense. 56% of people said that they were avoiding confrontation. They lacked courage. 44% of people said they ghosted because they were stressed or overwhelmed by expectations. 41% said there's not a strong enough connection. 39% said they were offended by something. And 29% of people said that they were struggling with their mental health. Now, I want to continue with this list because I think there's a few more reasons why people ghost. Number 7, I think people are worried about your reaction. Say you're an emotional type, you might be in a relationship with this person, and you worry that by breaking up with them, you're going to have to deal with a lot of negativity. Number 8, this person's been ghosted before, or you've been ghosted before, and you think it's okay to do to someone else. Number 9, you might have an avoidant attachment style. Check out some of my other videos on that topic. And number 10, you or they were not ready for a relationship, and they or you might have been leading somebody on. In short, as I said, people ghost because they lack the courage and they don't know how to cut off communication more directly. I'm going to get to those answers. But people somehow think it's kinder to say, oh, I'm busy or I'm traveling. It's sort of like pushing the can down the road. And they may not be ready for a serious relationship. They want to avoid the confrontation or even protect you from being hurt. Sometimes people ghost because something unexpectedly happens in their personal life too, but much smaller statistic. I might add that there are only a few set of circumstances where ghosting actually is okay. Let me give the scenario. You get creeped out by a person that you believe is toxic or dangerous, that they will somehow harass you. They won't be able to take no for an answer. And in this case, 75% of people think that ghosting is appropriate in certain situations. Safety first. The people who think that ghosting is not bad are generally the avoidant types of people. And if you looked at my statistics from my quiz, that's somewhere around 20% of people. But they convince themselves that ghosting is better than giving feedback. Somehow you, a ghoster, I'll call you, would perceive that in order to disappear completely, it's easier and a better way to handle the situation for all people. Because if I wouldn't want to receive that kind of feedback, I'm going to assume that you are the same. But here's the thing. There's a big difference between giving feedback and holding up someone's romantic energy. Because if you were in this situation and they polled people, 90% of people who had been ghosted said they would prefer to know. That's right, 90% of people. I would prefer to know. Because the problem is, if I'm left on red, we had a great date, I'm waiting on you, and you are holding up my romantic energy. Now, ghosting isn't just limited to singles finding love either. Ghosting has crept into all manners of relationships, including friendship. A surprising 1 in 2 people reported that they were ghosted by a close friend. Now, this has happened to more Gen Zs compared to the millennials. So what are we looking at? The statistics are that ghosting is on the rise. More than half admitted to ghosting a friend by abruptly cutting off communication. What's the main reason for doing that? Again, to avoid confrontation. You're hearing a theme here. But the effects of ghosting. How will you feel? And I did a poll on Instagram. How do people feel if they're the ghoster, if they've been ghosted? 86% of people admit that they feel relief after ghosting. Interesting. 69% said that they felt guilty. And 46% of people said they regretted it. Again, doesn't equal 100% here. But many people feel like, whew, that's kind of over. But later, that's when the guilt and the regret creeps in. Let's talk attachment styles, because I just mentioned that the avoidant person might be more likely to be the ghoster, but the anxiously attached person is going to be affected the most by the ghosting. Why? Because they're going to take it personally. The avoidant, it makes sense. They hate conflict. They didn't learn in their family to give feedback, so they're going to avoid it at all costs. Now, before I get to my coping skills, can we talk about something else? I want to talk about how hard it is when you're also in a situationship. What does that mean, right? A situationship, I hate the word, but it means that you are not in a full-blown relationship. You're dating somebody casually. You're not sure where it's going to end up. But what happens then? Do we still call it ghosting? Because you've been dating someone for a period of time. You're not committed in a relationship, but suddenly they disappear. And these relationships sometimes are even harder because if you're in a relationship with someone, you understand what their quirks are, what their differences are. You can almost wrap your head around it and create your own closure. But in a situationship, you're still at such early phases that you might have a lot of fantasy about the person. And then what's really hard is you've been essentially broken up with, right? You've been rejected. But then when people ask you, you're going through a hard time, through a breakup, and people say, well, how long were you dating? And you say, well, we weren't really dating. It's almost like you're not allowed to feel the grief, despite the fact that everything I just mentioned about ghosting, you too are feeling that. But somehow it's like you don't have the right to feel that. And the lack of closure is even more difficult. I just want to say I have real empathy for these situations, but let's get to my main point of this video is what are you going to do? How are you going to cope? So if this is you, you've been on a few dates with someone, you know they like you, obviously more than you like them. What do you do? All right, you need a boost of courage. Think also of those top reasons. Most of the time, it's not really going to be about the other person, right? You're not feeling it. You don't see a future with them. For whatever reason, there's something that's just not a fit. It comes down to karma. If 90% of people say that they would rather no, keep that in mind. You need to tell that person. And no, you don't have to give them feedback. Because a lot of times in the comments, people say, well, I don't want to be critical and I don't want to give them feedback. The person is not actually looking for feedback. They just need to know that they can move on. So try something like this instead. Hey, John, I'm so sorry. Well, no, you don't even have to say I'm sorry. Hey, John, it was so nice meeting you. I had a great time with you the last 3 days, but I hate to admit I'm just not feeling it. I wished I felt more a connection, but I want to wish you the best of luck in your search. How does something like that sound? People worry then, well, what if they ask why? All right, you can have a follow-up response to that. You can say something like, after thinking a lot about it, I should be feeling more, but I just can't will my heart to feel it. Okay? That sounds fair, right? It's not like, oh, I've done anything, you're just not feeling it. But here's what not to do. Don't chase them. If you're texting, double texting, triple texting, it's because you're in the situation, in grief actually called bargaining, where you think to yourself that maybe I didn't let them know how much I like them. And maybe for some reason, they're not responding to me because they think I'm not into it. So I want to text them and tell them that I am there and that I am interested in them. But that's your ego. And you're afraid that if you do nothing, that they're going to forget you. Newsflash, when someone does disappear, when they ghost, they know very well what they're doing. Okay, that list is right there. You are looking for validation. And when you don't hear back from them, it kind of reconfirms that you're not good enough. I said this in my last video, don't give your power or your energy away. Ask yourself, why am I allowing this person to affect me like this? So don't chase. If you remember one thing from this video, it's that you are the tequila, not the lime. Don't chase. So now, if you have gotten ghosted, what is my advice for you? Remember that someone ghosting you isn't your fault, and that there's someone out there who's a better match for you. You'll be able to find another person who's excited to spend time with you and talk with you. Well, if you've been ghosted a few times, and I can recall that myself, take things slow and be upfront about your relationship expectations when you start talking to someone. Remember, it's all about being authentically yourself. You're going to be better matched with someone if you say, I'm looking for a serious relationship, or I'm looking for the potential of a relationship, instead of sliding into these slippery slope kind of situationships, hoping that that person will come around. That way people will know what you expect of them in terms of communication. So my relationship RX, be the lead character in your own story. A secure person, as I've said last time, doesn't give their power away. It upsets you to be broken up with. I get it. Think about talking to a therapist, cry with your girlfriends. Stand in front of the person and be able to be fine with what they say. I know it's tough, but there's that famous quote that I love. Work like you don't need the money. Dance like nobody's watching. And love like you've never been hurt. I hope that helps when it comes to ghosting. It's way too common. If we had more people with courage, people like yourself who are watching these videos, who want to educate themselves, get better at the process, I promise you won't be ghosted forever. You'll find someone who truly sees you and loves you for who you are.